In part one, I'm gonna cover waterfall skirt. What is it basically? Because I'll show the actual method later in part 2 or 3. So waterfall skirt, pattern matching, and then cutting the fabric on this one. Let's get started. All right, one more aspect that I'm gonna talk about in this video is railroading fabric. So what that is and railroading. I'm out here on my back patio again. I don't know, because my workroom is just packed right now. I don't have room to bring the sofa in, so I just lifted it up. I'm gonna do it here. So the lighting is not great. It's getting ready to storm. There's gonna be some thunder, so a waterfall skirt. This sofa it's essentially a waterfall skirt. There's no welt coming across here to divide this skirt from the deck or the platform. So this is essentially a waterfall skirt. I'll show you a couple examples of other waterfall skirt. Let me show you here on my chairs what I mean by the welt or something that's dividing the deck from the skirt. So this chair out on my patio is an example of not a waterfall skirt. So there's welt there and it divides the body of the slipcover from the skirt. If it was waterfall, this whole side of the chair would just be all one piece. This is how the side of a piece of furniture with a waterfall skirt looks. It's just all one piece, smooth all the way down to the pleat. Okay, so here's my fabric, and let's talk about railroading a bit. So here's my selvage, and then my other selvage is down here. Selvage here and selvage here. And you can see that my stripe is running along the weft of the fabric from selvage to selvage, which is unusual. Generally, most of the time I see the stripes running down the warp of the fabric or lengthwise. But this makes it really great because I can use this fabric in a railroad this fabric, which means you run it lengthwise. So I can just continually run my fabric across the whole sofa. Oftentimes, in order, like for patterned fabric, if you have a floral patterned fabric, it almost always runs warp-wise. So you have to run your fabric from the top to the bottom of your piece because your pattern is on the fabric or woven into the fabric that way. If you railroaded it, your pattern would be sideways and your floral stems would be growing out of the side of the flower instead of at the bottom of the bunch of flowers or whatever. Railroading your fabric is running it lengthwise sideways, and I can do that because my stripes are done that way. On my other sofa slipcover, I did not do that. I ran it, like this. Even though it was a solid pattern, I still ran it this way and put 2 seams. So I used full width of fabric this way and then a half a width on each side and put 2 seams in there. So if you're using a solid fabric and it doesn't matter which way it runs, you can railroad the fabric that way, and it does make it a lot faster. Watch my other sofa slipcover video and see what my thinking was as far as why I did not railroad that fabric even though it was a solid pattern. Check that video, I'll put it in the cards here. And I've got to go get my scissors so I can start cutting this. And I think I need to lower this sofa down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out my pieces and I'm going to go ahead and cut them all, and then I will lay them back inside out because we are going to reverse pin fit this. That's what it's going to be called when we do it inside out. Before you even get to this point, if you're making a slipcover, your fabric should always be washed and dried before you start, so that once your slipcover is made, you can launder it as usual. So make sure you wash and dry before you start your project. One thing about having stripes is it does make it easy to cut. I'm going to cut this in between these 2 stripes. Okay, it actually looks like I might be able to, this is coming all the way to here, and I think I've got a little, no, I might be able to just seam this here. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'll use this same fabric on my platform or deck. You could potentially use a different fabric here if you're using a very expensive fabric and you want to conserve your decorator fabric. You could use a different fabric from here to here, but it does make for a little bit more work because clearly you're going to have to put 2 seams there. So I think I'm just going to use this. All right, I'm gonna do the outside arms. For cutting and pinning your sofa, all you really need are your good scissors and your pot o' pins. This is actually a little bowl that I bought at an auto parts store. It's got this real heavy duty magnet on the bottom, so it holds all the pins in the bowl, and it also magnets to my sewing table and other things. Okay, so I'm gonna do the side of the outside arm now. On the side of the sofa, so from here over the top and into the inside, I have to think about matching my patterns. What I think I'll do, so I don't want to have a lot of waste, is I'll center it with the same amount from here to here, from the front of the sofa to this stripe and the back of the sofa to this stripe. Kind of, because the sofa does curve out a little bit at the top. So I'm going to put a couple pins in here just to hold this in place and cut my fabric. And really from here, I know that if I cut along that stripe, that's going to be more than enough to get around that. What I'm doing is the draping method. And the reason why I do this is because most slip covers, I cut and pin in my clients' homes. I don't make them bring their sofas to me. If I'm doing a chair or a small piece of furniture, I will either pick up the furniture or have them deliver it to my workroom. But for sofas, we don't do that. I just do all the cutting and pinning in their house. And so there's not really any other way to do it other than just drape the fabric right on the piece of furniture and cut it right there. Since I'm doing this in my home and this is for me, I could potentially measure each piece. So measure the width of it and the height of it down to the bottom of the skirt, of course. And I could take this fabric into my workroom, or if you're doing this, you don't have a huge table, you could just lay the fabric on the floor and cut the pieces to the sizes and then come out here and pin it all together. I did that on the other sofa, but I'm not doing that now because this is the method that I'm so used to, is just draping the fabric on the piece, cutting it like this. The other thing is because I've got a pattern, a stripe, I'm gonna have to match the stripes up. And so draping it is the way to go if you've got a pattern match. You can pin your patterns together right on your piece. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually take this piece of fabric and lay it right on top of this other piece of fabric, match up the stripes exactly, and cut that piece from this one, because I want the stripes here to be exactly the same on the other side. It's gotta be a mirror image on the other side. So I'll put them together right side to right side so that I make sure I get a mirror image on that side. Okay, I just put a notch up here. This one I'm cutting right on the outside of that stripe, running down this stripe right here, cut about 1 inch off of this stripe. I'm not super careful about this because I do give myself about 2 to 4 inches all the way around, so I've got a pretty good amount of wiggle room. That's sort of imperative when you're making a slipcover, so that you can shift your fabric around a little bit if you need to. Okay, so this is both outside arms. So what I'm gonna go ahead and do, I'm gonna go ahead and pin this on inside out. I just pinned that. The stripes are inside because we're reverse pin fitting, and I just put a few pins just to hold the fabric onto the side, so this will help me to pin this. So now I'm going to cut off all this excess fabric. I'm leaving myself about 3 inches above this arm. And I'll go ahead and put a couple relief cuts here because I know I'm going to need them. Now I can cut my tiny little piece that's going to go here. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm making sure that I'm matched up on the patterns on the stripes up here. That way they'll continue to match down the whole piece. So I will make sure my stripes are plumb. And I've got enough fabric here to get back into that whole crook of the arm and all the way to the back of the top. Looks good. Let's make sure my stripes are plumb. And they are. So now I can cut this, come around the front. Let's see, I'm gonna cut extra here so I can come around the front of the arm if I want to. So I can cut up to this stripe here. The stripes do make it easy to use as guidelines for cutting, that's for sure. So there's some advantage there, but the disadvantage is having to match them up on your piece, which takes a good bit of extra thinking and planning. I'm not going to go all the way down with that because I need to cut this off here, and this needs to be able to come around for my skirt. So I'm going to give myself a good bit of space down here, which this is probably giving me at least 5 inches down here so that I can tuck. Wow, it's so hot out. Now I can take off some of this. Give myself a lot of extra here also. So let me cut a little piece for here. So I'd like for it to be one continuous. So I know I need about a 4-inch strip. So I'm gonna go ahead and just cut this whole piece, and I'll cut both of them, both sides from here. Cut off this selvage first, and then I'll cut 2 4-inch wide strips. 1, 2. So now this piece will go from the top down this arm and down the front to the skirt. So now I'm going to match up the pattern on this to the pattern on my outside arm, and I'm going to pin all these stripes. I'm going to pin every single stripe.
That's it for now. Click the video on the screen to see the pinning process.